I will give you less technical talk. I will give you context, I will give you strategy, and I will show up some problems we have in the blockchain space today and which we need to resolve, and problems which we have outside of the space which we need to resolve as well. So we are going to start with a short talk of the president of France. Actually, I'm not really used to use politicians at blockchain-like presentations, but in this case, I make an exception. Bear with me if the audio is not the top quality, because I need to put the microphone directly on the laptop to make that happen.
L'armistice de 1918 a mis fin à la Première Guerre mondiale avec une volonté, plus jamais cela. Alors que l'Europe sortait de 4 années de conflits terribles, faisant des millions de morts, elle avait cette volonté de mettre fin à ces conflits. Mais dès les années qui ont suivi, les démocraties ont perdu pied, ont douté, et les nationalismes d'un côté, les totalitarismes de l'autre ont repris leurs droits. Et la Deuxième Guerre mondiale arrive à bientôt. Ce risque-là nous guette. Ce risque de la division, des nationalismes, du repli, des grandes peurs qui feraient douter les démocraties, de l'absence de coopération internationale, c'est celui que notre monde est peut-être en train de vivre. Le 11 novembre 2018, nous fêterons le centenaire de l'armistice de 1918. À Paris, nous inviterons les chefs d'État qui ont participé à cette grande guerre et de nombreux autres chefs d'État qui seront aussi présents. Pas simplement pour commémorer ce centenaire de l'armistice du premier conflit mondial, mais pour essayer ensemble de tenir la promesse que nous nous étions alors faite. Plus jamais ça. Aussi avons-nous décidé d'organiser notre forum pour la paix à cette occasion. Ce forum, qui se tiendra à Paris, le 11, 12, 13 novembre 2018, aura pour but de rassembler des chefs d'État et de gouvernement, des dirigeants d'organisations internationales, des dirigeants d'ONG, des intellectuels, des acteurs, toutes celles et ceux qui veulent penser, agir, faire le multilatéralisme d'aujourd'hui, construire la paix parce qu'elle est en danger. Le Forum de Paris sur la paix a un objectif, réfléchir ensemble, proposer des initiatives concrètes, réinventer le multilatéralisme et toutes les formes de coopération contemporaine pour que la paix, chaque jour, gagne du terrain. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, chaque jour, la paix en perd. Je vous invite donc, pour que nous gagnions ensemble ce combat positif, à proposer vos projets, car nous en manquons, des projets concrets, que vous soyez chef d'État ou de gouvernement, que vous soyez responsable d'ONG, que vous soyez chef d'entreprise, citoyen, intellectuel, proposez vos projets concrets pour le Forum de Paris. Que vous soyez américain, du Nord, du Centre ou du Sud, que vous soyez africain, du Levant, de l'Asie, du Pacifique, de tous les continents, nous avons besoin de vos initiatives et de vos projets pour que ce forum soit un succès, pour qu'il permette de penser, d'agir pour aujourd'hui et pour demain. Je compte donc sur vous et je vous donne rendez-vous le 11 novembre prochain à Paris pour notre forum pour la paix.
I will give you a very short wrap-up, a very short one. It was about war. It was about that we are in a time where we have increasingly instability, and it was about the invitation for collaboration from Macron to come to Paris on the 11th of November to stand together for a forum, international forum for peace. And I see some similarities here. I believe that the open source initiatives are collaborative, are open. I believe that in the blockchain space we have many problems to overcome, which I think are easier to overcome in a collaborative approach. And I think also that there is a not very well recognized role blockchain plays when it comes to international coordination. So I want to go into a talk why governance is important for blockchain projects and how this plays together. So actually we applied with a project to that Paris Peace Forum, which is a blockchain initiative, which is called the Distributed Governance Conference, which will take place later this year in Athens. And why we'll go over that topic, you will better understand why. If you read that description here, it speaks about resource scarcity, managing shared resources. It also speaks about resolving tension. It speaks about how we can challenge the abuse of power. If you think about a blockchain platform, a distributed application, and then think about that one person or a small number of people has the ability to directly change how the platform behaves because they hold the private key for the smart contracts, then you might ask yourself, how is this different to Facebook or Twitter? And I think this is a legit question because we have different ways of distribution. We have the architectural distribution, but we have also the political distribution. And distributed systems aren't distributed if the decision-making process is not distributed. So let's get into it. We have public blockchains, which serve as the underlying platform for example, smart contracts or for services which can be used from the users. And I say again, if the political power for those platforms is not distributed, they are prone to abuse of power from those people which own those platforms or control them. This is true for DApps as well. And this is true for decentralized exchanges. I think this is very clear if you have looked into that topic. Decentralized exchanges with a centralized power structure are not really different than banks. We have a process to go from a centralized structure to a decentralized structure. And I understand that we don't really know how to do distributed governance yet. But we see some examples, and this is a huge respect for the Gnosis team, who is sitting here in Full Node, which are actually like the main, which are the initiators for that co-working space here. They built DutchX, which is a really decentralized exchange. And they moved their power to DAO. So DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, is acting as a governance body to represent the will of the users and the stakeholders. Think about decentralized networks as well. One thing which brought me into the space was how unhappy I was with Facebook. How unhappy I was that somebody is abusing my data and tells me what I should think because it shows me just what I should see from their perspective. I believe that freedom directly is connected to the ownership of data, and I believe that freedom is also connected to how informations are shared and how we are able to make decisions what informations are shared with us. So if you look into blockchain projects, close to all projects we see have a similar approach how they behave. So there is somebody with a great idea who steps up and says, I have the great idea, I have the right background, and I can gather a team full of inspiration together to build that new DApp, which replaces maybe a centralized service or which acts as an infrastructure for smart contracts. And this person forms a team, moves forward to do an ICO. That's the most common way how we do it today. And imagine that it might be possible to do it differently, right? Bitcoin didn't do an ICO. And I can only advocate that we look more into other ways how we can mine instead of just raising it or minting it. And usually then you have a test launch of that app. It proceeds to mainnet launch. You then come to the point that you need to make a decision as a designer team. A point where it makes sense, from my point of view, to introduce more decentralized components, to onboard stakeholders and to listen to them, to understand what they need, because you're developing not another centralized Facebook, because there is no value add for that. You can just do it on MSN or on another computational platform. But to develop that with the ecosystem you are creating. And then it comes to a very, very difficult decision for any architectural team. If you build something, you are very attached to it, and you want it to succeed. But you need to come to that point where you have grown that idea, where the idea is old enough to start working on its own. And that's the point where it's very important that the architects step down from their position as the creators of those platforms and give it into a way that these platforms become distributed governed to represent the user's interest and the stakeholders' interest in a way that it becomes a fair platform. And I believe we will see zero margin models where we have publicly service offered in a very fair manner, which enables us to really also undercut existing solutions. Imagine, for example, a Uber platform which is not using the margin to like upstream, but using the margin to improve user experiences and lower costs. And this is possible with full autonomous organizations, and this is possible with the platforms we can build. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes sense and makes the existing model obsolete. You might have heard that. And I want to introduce you a new thinking I believe is essential to overcome the current structures we have to build more fair systems. And I want to quote Jordan Greenhalgh on that one. We need an entirely new or different model of dealing with reality, a new frame of mind, a collective intelligence. This is the ability to come into communion with a group and act as a single unit of intelligence. And I want to elaborate on that. How nice a world can be if we just accept that we don't hold the truth, that I just don't argue in right or wrong, but start to say, oh, that's my perspective. I'm very curious to hear your ones. And please share your perspective so that we can create together a better picture of what is actually going on. And I think this is the power of collective intelligence. This is the power we can unlock if we find new ways to collaborate. I want to give you an overview from a graphic I've taken from the article of collective intelligence on Wikipedia, which is pretty straightforward. So it just says collective intelligence has like 3 different fields. Cognition, which is market judgment and predictions of future events in the political and technology space. You have cooperation, which is network of trust, open source, and peer-to-peer business. And you have coordination, which is ad hoc communities and coordinating collective action. And now I will build a bridge between that graphic and the blockchain space. Cognition. And I go back and forth here. Market judgment and predictions of future events in politics and technology. We have the rise of prediction markets. And Gnosis is one of those startups which do a very, very good job in exploring that and unlock it for us. We have the network of trust, open source, and peer-to-peer business. What might this be? Anyone? Peer-to-peer? Open source? Network of trust? What could this be? Yes, I believe so. I believe so that this is about distributed consensus protocols. And this icon there could be any infrastructure, right? It could be Ethereum, it could be Eternity, it could be Definity. It just has to be that I'm believing that this is a very good approach, that the root calculus helps us a lot to achieve actually a secure infrastructure. We have the coordination space, which is ad hoc communities and coordinating collective action. And I describe the space as distributed governance. It might be that you have a different word for that, and I'm really looking forward to hear that from you, how you would describe it. But I want to give you a little bit more insights about that field and why I feel it's so important that we elaborate that and elevate that debate around distributed governance. So this is a different way of thinking about blockchain space as well. It shows 3 circles. I think 3 fields which we need to get right to build decentralized applications, and where 2 are actually not really technical. We have the distributed consensus protocols, the tech side of things, which is pretty much a protocol itself. Then we have the token economics. And Bitcoin is a protocol which uses a very good model on token economics to enable its growth and its optimization. It has a very basic form of governance. where the reason also is that we might run into massive challenges with the energy consumption. But I think everything has its price, and this is raising awareness on the other side, so we might use that awareness to make better decisions in the future. And we have the field of distributed governance, and the distributed governance part is all about humans. It's about us and how we want to use the technology. And if you go into that, say, way of thinking, you can identify how those things play together. For example, you have, give me a second. Oh, here it is. So you have that space, which is clearly the space where the node validation and the token economics is, right? And you have that space where the governance of higher order governance arises. So how does community interact with a distributed consensus community or platform? And you have that space as well. I think there's a lot about the behavior design and incentive design. So what do we really want to incentivize? I want to go a little bit into the definition of governance because this is, I think, important to understand the perspective where we are coming from here. So Vlad Zamfir is a deep thinker in that space. I have a very high opinion of him. He has his definition is pretty much the process of establishing, maintaining, and revoking the legitimacy of decisions and decision-making processes, norms, and principles. That's pretty solid. Let's take a distributed in front of it, and this is just a proposal. I don't claim that this is right. Like I said before, let's share opinions about what this really is, and we might understand it together better than one person can do. Distributed governance is specifications and principles and methods which enable scalable coordination. And I jump to the last part here. Scalability, what does it mean with governance? It means that efficiency is not reduced but steady or increases with the number of participants increasing. So this is, you put 1 million people into a decision-making process and you get better results than from a hierarchical structure in a way faster way and with way more deep thoughts and more opinions. That's the challenge we are taking on if we want to resolve the distributed governance challenge. We have also that where all participants are treated equally without the presence of a central actor or hierarchy. And this is essential because if you're having different roles, you limit the ability of scalability. Forming consensus and legitimate processes is the same purpose of distributed governance as it is in governance. So we take that with us. There is a thing which is not directly related to the tech, but I want to speak about it, which is the ethical side of things. This is about win-lose theory and omni-win play rules, I would say. In a win-lose game, and you know one which is pretty predominant from the Cold War, is where one player wins and one player loses. The problem is with some games you can't win. Because if you play that game, like Global War with nukes, then nobody wins because the chess game is not there anymore, or the playground is just evaporated into dust. And this is relevant if we speak about shared resources. Because if we are not able to coordinate with the scarce resources we have on our planet, or if we play around with technology which is so powerful that we can easily get destroyed by it, and we see that with nukes, but we will see that with AI as well, and robotics. So if we don't find a way to purposefully use that technology, we will run into problems. And here's one guideline how we might be able to do that. So let's try to create strong network effects through aligned interests, first of all. So what are the aligned interests we have? We need to identify them. And while optimizing for the least negative impact, we are also trying to optimize for the most positive impact for all involved parties. So instead of me winning a lot of money, we all win a little bit of money. And this might be a more positive impact than other people starving to death. Achieving equilibriums with non-aligned and contradictory interests is the essential thing of system design, if we think about blockchains as well, which is a little bit more into the economics. But it's about that we need to equal out if we have interests which are not contradictory. And I give you an example. Mining, like in Bitcoin, if the mining transaction fees are too high, users are disincentivized to use the network and use it for payments. But if it's too low, the miners have no interest anymore to run their validation processes because they don't get enough to cover their costs or make a return. This is a model which I want to introduce to give you a little bit of understanding how we might approach that angle, which gives us the ability to design those systems more carefully and more purposefully. So there's layer 1, which is protocol governance. This is pretty much down to the code level, where you as a miner decide if you want to apply the code or not. And there are some basic, say this is a basic protocol. And to that basic protocol, I can also secure voting protocols or identity protocols, which are required for any higher order governance principles. Then we have the layer 2 governance protocols, which are higher order governance models. So you can take different governance functions, and a simple voting function is a governance function, and put them together into a governance system. Self-sovereign digital identities, for those who haven't heard about it, it will replace any password, any key you have probably today, and you will have the ability to fully control your data. That is one promise I believe we can achieve with blockchain technologies. Voting anytime, anywhere with 0 to 0 costs for the voting processes is around the corner. So we might identify ways to just use our phones to all vote together on a daily basis if we want to. And then there are a lot of questions on what are we voting, how do we vote, and so on and so forth. But we are all connected today. Why do we do not even try to do that more efficiently? Let's introduce a little bit. We had that before. So we spoke about the basic concepts. Let's speak about a higher order concepts. Higher order concepts, and this is also, again, just a proposal to think about it, just a way to put it in order to communicate better about it. We're speaking about a lot about signaling functions. So in the Ethereum community, there was the magician form of Circle formed, which was speaking lately here in Berlin again about also governance. It's about friction which comes into those systems by, for example, frozen funds from parity. And signaling functions are those functions to listen. So to listen to community and to understand what they need. Imagine we would have a fair way of signaling a wish of a community, then we would understand which groups have which opinion. And with that, we can find better compromises and find ways to create cohesion. And when I say cohesion, I mean a way that all people feel included and that they accept the current way the platform is developing. We have proposing functions. So this is all about collaboration, functionalities we can use to find consensus, to propose, to have the ability to coordinate in a digital realm efficiently with trustworthy processes. And we have the decision-making function, which is pretty much legitimizing the proposal which was put there. And we might develop a path that all those things merge together in a very fluent way, where it is not even necessary anymore to vote. Because voting has many faces. Voting is also what you buy. Voting is where you go. Voting is how you interact with other people. And I want to open up the thinking in that direction, that we are pretty first-grade class right now in the society outside there, where we do a voting every 4 years about yes or no about a specific party. We can do that way better. We can do that more efficiently, we can do it smarter, and we can try that to develop new paths to actually explore distributed governance. This is just an example for how you can mathematically specify actually how voting functions work and what they are optimized for. There is a person, Pietro Di Speroni, I have huge respect for him. He does research on governance and democracy for over 20 years. And he's a mathematician as well. So he specified actually which governance functions we need to do or to use to optimize for a specific outcome. And what he was speaking about, if you have 2 proposals, yeah, you just vote for it, and then you get the better result. But what the hell are you doing if you have n proposals, so like 5 proposals? How do you vote most efficiently to get a good compromise for the group? And one way to do that is to have multiple voting rounds. So you vote a yes, and you might have 3 voices to put up, and you vote a no, and you have 3 no's to put up. And then you get a very good graphic about where the consent lies, where disagreement lies, and where a lot of support lies. And this is a way how you can optimize for a specific certain group what is the best outcome for them, what they could agree on best. But this is not the end of the story, this is just the beginning, and this is just a part of probably thousands of functions we will be able to specify in a mathematical manner. This is a model which I'm currently working on to enable diverse governance in distributed systems. If you think about Ethereum, you have shards, which means that you have a big blockchain which interconnects those different blockchains, and you have the shards where you can specify maybe additional rules. And I will give you a way of thinking about it. You have the governance one layers where the protocol lies. And I believe that this should be part of net autonomy, so this means like net neutrality actually. That we shouldn't mess with the miner's contents. So if you have, and we have that, if you have artifacts of child porn in the blockchain itself, in the Bitcoin blockchain, is it the right way to shut down all the miners and declare them all criminals? I don't believe so. And I think we need to find a way how we accept that there is a part of that blockchain infrastructure which should be neutral. But the question is, what are you doing if you're consuming it? I think this is criminal. But there are many opinions about that as well, and I accept that. But for that, this is enabling a way how we can think about creating a lot of different governance models in maybe different shards. So in RChain, we speak about namespaces. So this means that we create some form of subchains, right? And in which subchains we can define smart contracts which represent an enforcement layer, a specific governance model, what you can agree on, a social contract. And then we can derive with a diversification and a lot of different governance models. And some of them might be not regulated at all. And that's fine. This is how it is today. There are some places out there which are not regulated. But on the other side, we want to have zones which can be regulated to protect people. And this is what it enables. So if we have the different shards with all the different, say, social contracts, where the different dApps derive as childs of those social contracts, then we can build trust between the different dApp instances and declare if we want to trust a different zone or not. And with that, we get the ability to say, okay, I don't want to speak with the instance of that dApp in that country because they do not enforcement for child pornography, for example. And you can do that, or you can say, okay, they have different rules why I do not agree. Or you might change that relationship of trust there. And I don't want to speak only about like a CP, but also like violence, hate speech, and all that stuff. But I don't think that we should have any centralized censorship unit on a blockchain, right? So how can we create the diversification we need to enable the freedom we need to have a diversification also in a way of living we want to live? And this is just a model, and I heavily invite you start think more about this component of how do we coordinate ourselves and how do we collaborate. Because this is very direct and very essential to find new ways how we can coordinate society. I want to give you an example. And as like I said, it's all just proposals. I believe one of the major things we need to think about is how do we get a social contract for online community? So what are the principles you want to share with those people you connect online with? And how can you do that? If you think about constitutions, there are the essential pieces which legitimize any force of like governance and rules and so on. If you want to find a way how to coordinate it with each other, then you need to find the principles you want to follow. And this might be freedom of speech, this might be the freedom to participate in voting, right? And this is a question I ask myself, how can we build governance function? And it's just a proposal. There might be many better ways to do that. I believe the definition of values and living those values is essential. If you don't know the constitution you're having, and if you're not exercising those values, they are pointless. But how do we interact with those values we might want to have a little bit more static in these different communities? A way to do that is to do explanations and examples. So you explain, you give context to those values you live, and you give examples how you live them. And then we have a third level of open discussion. So how can we enable that we all can identify with those values, and how can we interact with them? Because sometimes it needs that process of hammering against those values to understand them and to start living them. And that is a model how we might be able to do that. So I believe that this level 3 is the space where we have all the high transactions. So a lot of people discuss and so on. And we have voting functions, governance functions, like signaling, like proposing, and like making decisions to upvote things which come out of that discussion. So for example, an example how we cultivate those values, or examples and explanation. So you can vote up from here explanations and examples to the second level, and give more context to the core of the value. And then you do the same again. You can like discuss and propose and vote up those exponential, like this essential explanation of those values. And I think about it as a core of the atom, and then you have the stuff around, which is more fluid, and if you go out, it's even more fluid. And you can do the same way back, and that's the reason why they point back as well here. So this means if something is not suiting you, you just vote it out. And this is just an idea how we might be able, a direction how we might be able to crowdsource the principles we share. We don't need to be all on the same page. But we might want to be interested, what are the basic principles we share in this room? So say the smallest common denominator we have and share. And if you thought about a new way about distributed governance and about the role governance plays in the blockchain space, I did my job. And I just want to finish with inviting you to a place in Athens where we try to bring together not only the blockchain space, but the world of academia, the world of legal and policymakers, and the world of those people which are practitioners of actually low hierarchies or hierarchy-free ways of coordination. And the goal is to come together to develop shared understanding how we can start to iterate on governance and how we can start to pick up on new ways how we can coordinate to feel more included and where we can participate more actively. Thank you. Before I want to hand over to Patrick, and I know that I stole a little bit of time from you, I'm sorry, Patrick. I want to give you a short possibility to answer, say, 3 minutes of questions if you have some. Mike is here, I will bring it to you. Anyone? Sure.
Just explain what I don't understand why you used the video of Macron at the beginning.
Pardon?
I don't understand the video.
The video, okay, sorry. So the video in the beginning is about invitation of the leader of France about collaboration, international collaboration to form new ways of governance. And I see a direct relationship between what they try to achieve and what we try to achieve, while we take a different angle, right? So we try to take the angle of, well, actually we don't wait that other develop that stuff for us, but we start developing it ourselves. And we do it better in the like systems we build, right? That vision is there. And I see the good intent, and I want to appreciate that because I don't think that we should fight wars, but find ways of building bridges to collaborate also with the public sector, which does a fairly good job in some areas, right? So that's the idea of it.
Hi. I'm just wondering, so is this in the framework of RChain? Are you saying that this is you're going to be using the platform as a way of sort of achieving these goals?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge commitment to do extensive research. This is not a model we will use, but to do extensive research to find new ways of governance and to implement those forms.
I was just wondering if you could maybe provide me with all of us here with an example of a potential use case of how you would achieve those goals that you have mentioned using the blockchain infrastructure that you have been working on.
Yes, so if you have a secure way of providing smart contracts for identity and voting, you already did a great job, right? Because we could just put the same system we have right now and just be sure that there is no fraud, right? But I think we can do way more of those things. So think about, I know we think about like cities, for example. You have a city and a city portal like you have in Zug, and Uport is doing a great job by providing the identities there and having a voting way to let people participate. And then you can use, for example, petition systems to hear what they want, okay, to understand their needs. I know some people which are working on a signaling website for Ethereum right now, which is also related to governance. But the whole governance debate itself, it's nothing which is closed. Say, this is not the debate we have as RChain, or this is the internal problems we have, as well as all other people have. But I see that, and we share that as a problem which we share, right? So we are not interested in trying to solve that our own, but we are actually very interested in listening how others approach that. Okay, how I give a more direct example. I think you have a tech background. No? Okay. Let me try. Think about how code is developed today. So you have the code base, GitHub, and where is it? At Microsoft, right? A centralized service, more or less. Git is decentralized, I know that. But how can we build processes to have all those code development, code commitments, and code review, and all that stuff on the system itself, so that we have the build server even, in a distributed manner. And I think if we get there, we're getting pretty close to a way that we share infrastructure we can trust. Right?
Thank you.
Sure. I don't want to steal any more time from you, Udo. I want you, please come on stage and tell us how an efficient way and a sustainable way of consensus works. You might know the proof of work, right? Thank you.